Okay, I think Bishop Berkeley is interesting for a number of reasons. Of course, it's part of the... I have two pairs of reading glasses. Why do I have two pairs of reading glasses? And that's just what I'm saying. Okay, I think Bishop Berkeley is interesting for a number of reasons. Partly because he's just weird. And it's good. One of the important things is our modern epistemology is still largely Berkeley's epistemology. We don't have the weirdness that he had, but we retain quite a lot of what Berkeley had to say. So he actually made a huge contribution to modern epistemology. And in a sense, just like modern epistemology is founded on Locke, it's also partially founded on Berkeley. It's very important in terms of telling us what we really can and cannot know, what we do and do not know, what truth is, what knowledge is. And the final thing is, that even more the deeper thing, the thing I'd like you to, most like you to carry away from this, is logic can take you to weird places. Because Berkeley, you know, history is full of people who have weird ideas out of nowhere. Right? If you look into Scientology, you look into, oh heavens, the Rosicrucians, you look into half the religion, other people's religion, not your religion. Your religion is perfectly sensible. You look into lots of things people believe, and just out of nowhere, they come up with this weird stuff. Scientology is a wonderful example, because it's like this weird, there's this evil space emperor, and trying to take over the universe, and we're operating thetans, and this stuff. And what is it based on? It's based on nothing. L. Ron Hubbard just made it up. But in philosophy, you can't just make stuff up. It has to have some logical basis. It has to come out of some thinking process. And the beautiful thing about Berkeley's weirdness is that it comes out of the epistemological tradition that started with Plato, with Socrates and Plato, and then took this big left turn with Locke. Locke gave us the first practical epistemology. Locke put epistemology on its feet and said, look, there's a world. We experience the world. That's how we get knowledge. We have this mind that starts tabula rasa. It starts as a blank slate, and we form impressions. And then you look out in the world, and you have primary, you have simple and complex ideas, which you form on the basis of sense data. Right? You have the ideas of red and square and long and short and bigger than, which we experience directly, and every other idea we can construct out of that. Nobody's refuted that. Nobody's overturned that. That's our basic epistemology today. And then Locke has his ontology, his view of the physical world. He says, look, objects have primary and secondary qualities. Objects have qualities. There are no substances. Right? There's no metaphysical stuff. There's just objects. There's this stapler has qualities. It has weight, mass, resistance, texture. It has color. It might have a smell, but I'm not going to risk smelling it. And I'm certainly not going to try to taste it. I was brewing this weekend. My buddy Jeff was brewing beer, and we sampled the last batch, had a pound of chocolate and a pound of coffee, dark malts. It was like no beer I'd ever tasted. Not really. Not really. It's a chocolate for more Scottish, I would think. Come to think of it a little bit. It was great. It wasn't heavy at all. It was very pungent. Anyway, there's this flavor. Okay, that's a secondary quality because it tasted differently to me than it did to Jeff. To Jeff, it tasted like chocolate. To me, it tasted like those nasty weeds you ever ivy or stickweed or milkweed or something. That's how it tasted to me. It's weird stuff. So, and all of this is very modern. Now, Berkeley takes this and just goes completely out into left field. Because what Berkeley did okay, I'm going to try and lay this out as a progression from Locke to Berkeley, and I'm going to try and show you a transition. Now, when Locke described secondary qualities, he said that in the objects there are powers to make secondary qualities in our minds. This stapler is not red. There is no red. What it has is a power to evoke color in our minds, to create color in our minds. It's got a power. When you're exposed to the stapler, when you look at the stapler, you get red. But the red is in your mind. It's not in the stapler. Now, if you think about that, that's very modern, because what's happening is light is being reflected off the stapler, and light is being absorbed by the stapler. And it so happens this stapler is pigmented so that every color of light except red is absorbed. It's absorbing the green light, it's absorbing the blue light, it's absorbing the yellow light, the orange light, whatever that isn't red is being absorbed, and only the red light is being reflected. So what the stapler has is the power to absorb sunlight and reflect other wavelengths of light, and when that wavelength of light hits our eyes, our brain creates the color red in the striate cortex back here. Well, that's how we interpret it now. But Berkeley didn't know any neurophysiology. Locke didn't know any neurophysiology. They were making this stuff up as they went along. They were inventing epistemology. So Locke just recognized experiences, different texture experiences and feel experiences. So he reckoned that there was differences between people's minds, so that the same feature in an object could create different experiences in different people. The power to create a color is the same in the stapler, but we react to it differently. Those of you who have ever noticed that you can taste things somewhat differently from other people? Have you ever noticed that something tastes one way to you but another way to someone else? Well, Locke will say, well, you're tasting the same thing. The thing isn't different between people. It has the same powers to create flavors in you, but you react differently. So that's Locke's epistemology. Now, Berkeley looked at this and he interpreted it kind of like this. What is the location of the secondary quality? If you ask Locke, where are the secondary qualities located? Where is red? It's not in the object, it's in your mind. Now, Berkeley looked at this and said, well, okay, secondary qualities are in our minds. Where are primary qualities? How do we know primary qualities? Okay. How do I know this stapler has the shape it does, has the mass it does, and so on? Well, okay. How do you guys know the shape of the stapler? Well, you know it by the shape of this patch of red. You have in your visual field a red patch with a particular shape. So you know it, you know the shape of the stapler through the secondary quality of color. So its shape is really in your mind. How do I know the shape? Well, same way you do, plus I get to touch it. Well, how do I know it goes from here to here? How do I know it has this extension? Well, when I move my hand up to it, it resists me. I have a feeling in my hand. I don't feel anything in the stapler. I feel it in my hand. I can't move my hands together. There's this feeling of resistance. How do I know what the stapler weighs? That it has mass? Well, it's a pressure on my hand. If I close my eyes, I feel the pressure. It's pushing on my hand. Resistance to movement, and so on. So, for Berkeley, primary qualities are only known through secondary qualities. This is Berkeley saying. Berkeley looks at Locke's a doctrine of primary and secondary qualities and says, hey, the only way anyone ever knows a primary quality is by a set of experiences of secondary qualities. So what we have here is secondary qualities. They're all secondary qualities, basically. They're all in the mind. For Berkeley, what's the difference between primary and secondary qualities? Well, it's easy to get agreement about primary qualities, but they're still in the mind. It's all in the mind. Every experience you have, every feeling you have, everything you have of mass, of shape, of extension, they are all in the mind. So we come to Berkeley's doctrine. Esse is specific. Now, this slogan is not as famous as Descartes. It's not as famous as Descartes' Cogito ergo sum, but it's much, much more important. For a start, Cogito ergo sum is misleading. Descartes thinks that because he thinks, therefore something exists that is not thinking. But that's not a deductive inference. That's not absolutely certain. You know for certain that you exist as a stream of thought. But whether any physical object exists to carry that stream of thought, or even any separate immaterial object exists to carry that stream of thought. Descartes actually did not prove anything beyond cogito. Cogito ergo cogito. Thinking exists. Your stream of thought exists. Your thoughts go together. This one, though, esse is perceiving. Existence is being perceived. Write that out. All qualities are in the mind. All qualities. Now, the question about this doctrine is not, is it true? Is it true that existence is the act of being perceived? It's how do we interpret this? What does it mean? And what are the ontological consequences? For Berkeley, there's all the elements of human knowledge, all the things that can be out there. But there's nothing that is not perceived. This is, by the way, this is very modern. How do we know that anything exists? Ask yourself, how do we know that anything exists? When you take something that whose existence is known, and when I say known, I don't mean that people say they know it exists. I mean that we actually do know it exists. There are lots of people who believe very passionately in various things. And they believe it so strongly that they're willing to kill people who disagree. But that isn't knowledge. That's just delusional system or something. I'm asking about stuff whose existence is well known. It is known with certainty that any rational person will agree that this thing exists. How do we know? And the answer is through perceptions. There is some perception, or some set of perceptions, that cannot be explained without assuming that this object exists. Like the existence of, say, well, let's go through it. Obviously, the existence of these lectins, the existence of this desk. How do we know this desk exists? We can feel it, we can see it, we can put crap on it. If someone asks you, is there a desk or is there a TV set in some classroom, and you go, how do you tell whether there's a TV set in a classroom? How would you tell whether or not there's a TV set in this classroom? You look around the classroom and then you go, whoop, that looks like a TV set. Feels like a TV set too. Sounds like one. You have to listen. But I'm not going to try tasting it. You turn it on, it's like, right, you direct your sensory equipment in the direction of the object in question, and if you perceive that object there, it's there. And this is something we take for granted all our lives. The difference between something being there and not being there. Have you ever opened your wallet to pay for something and then discovered you didn't have any money? Damn, I was sure I had a 20. How do you know that you don't have that $20? So when you're supposed to order, because you don't perceive it. Come on, you're supposed to understand this stuff so well right now that you're bored. Who's bored? I'm successful. Oh, yes, I'm boring. It made sense when I thought it up. Right? There's nothing out there whose existence is known without the senses. So as he is perceiving is a really good doctrine. It's not exactly right. I don't think it's exactly right. But Berkeley was the guy who tied existence down to perception. All right. Now, so far, Berkeley is brilliant. Berkeley is... Heck, Berkeley's a genius. Locke was a genius, Berkeley was a genius. The reason that we don't recognize Locke and Berkeley as geniuses nowadays is because who points out something that is blindingly obvious when we see it, when we look, after he points it out, but nobody noticed it before. So he's pointing out something nobody noticed before. Existence is only known through perception. In fact, existence is perceptibility. The way we tell the difference between things that exist and things that don't exist is that we have perceptions. Does anyone know much about the history of physics? There used to be a problem on how do you explain heat? How do you explain how heat gets from one object to another object? How do you explain the existence of heat in an object? What's going on? You know, yesterday, I foolishly tried to grasp a handle of a cast iron frying pan that had been on the barbecue grill. A handful of ice for about half an hour after that. I'm okay now, but it was nasty. Okay, why was it hot? How can something be hot? What's going on with it that it can be hot? I think around the time of Locke, the dominant scientific theory, the dominant scientific explanation of heat for a couple hundred years was caloric, which is a fluid, an invisible fluid that floats from one object to another, flows from one object to another, just flows, goes into cast iron objects when they're being heated. Phlogiston was combustion. Now these are discredited scientific theories. They were scientific theories at one time. They were the best explanation we had. But now they're not. And the reason we don't believe in caloric anymore, the reason we no longer believe in phlogiston, was because our perceptions of hot objects do not require us to use these concepts to explain them. We have the wrong perceptions for caloric and phlogiston to exist. Their existence does not really fit with our perceptions. Why don't we believe that there's an elephant in the room? Why don't we believe that our desks are made of cream cheese? Because those hypotheses do not fit our perceptions. And that's how science works too. So if you're going to say that something exists, you have to say how it changes our perceptions, how we perceive it. And if someone else can come up with an explanation for our perceptions that explains those perceptions reasonably without believing in your thing, then your thing doesn't exist. Period. Phlogiston doesn't exist. Caloric doesn't exist. We know this because our perceptions don't fit those hypotheses.
Oh wait, a calorie isn't the...
Caloric.
Alright.
Calorie is a different thing.
Alright.
Calories are a myth. What is heat, by the way? Does anyone know?
It's the offset of... it's the offset of energy. That's it.
Okay, here's two molecules. Imagine like holding up like 1,000 pens like this and say, here's two atoms in a cast iron frying pan. When they're just like this, moving very little, it's cold. When they move fast, it's hot. When they move really, really fast, it's really, really hot. When they move so fast, they're bouncing off each other, and and if they move really, really fast, it explodes, or at least it melts. That's it. Molecular movement. Atoms can move so fast that they give off photons. It's like red heat.
So it's energy.
Yes, it is energy.
Like I said.
What kind of energy?
Huh?
Somebody slapped him for me. I need an official slapper. Someone with good arms.
I don't think so. I don't do that at work.
Yeah, well, okay, I'll give him a baseball bat.
Alright, I mean, because men don't slap men, you know. I mean, back in the day they did, but then somebody didn't die afterwards.
Well, times have changed. Maybe I have an official thumper. I can adapt. So, all objects of human knowledge are sense data and arrangements of sense data. Berkeley has this concept, the given. I like to call it the sensorium, because sensorium is a cool word. Also, it has sense in it. Take everything that you are sensing right now, all the contents of your consciousness, your sensorium, so whatever you are aware of right now, that's part of what Berkeley calls the given. And if you trace your awareness back through time, everything you've given, that's your life, that's your experience, everything you've ever sensed. And in that given, in that sensorium, there are a whole variety of senses, of sensations. Enormous, incredibly complex, complicated wall of sense data, huge torrent of data that you organize. And one of the ways you organize your sense data is you notice some stuff comes together, and you call these physical objects. If you have a sensation you have a sensation of weight, along with a sensation of color, and so on, call it a physical object. So, you have this physical object. It is an ensemble of sense data. Any physical object you can ever encounter is an ensemble of sense data. An exercise you could do is in your mind, look at an object and say, is there anything, any part of that object, anything that I can point to in that object, anything I know is there that is not sense data, that is not sense data or an arrangement of sense data. Berkeley would say, you're always going to come up with the answer we know. Whatever you say about the object, either it's sensory, it's something you sense, or it's not there.
What about a virus?
Virus. Okay. Why do we believe viri exist?
Because they do.
Why do we believe ghosts exist?
They don't.
They don't. Right. So how do we get to the thing? How do we get to this belief that viruses exist? Why do we believe viruses exist? Because there's a bunch of sense data. People get sick, right? And the first explanation for all disease, that isn't physical injury, all disease was bacteria, germs, microbes. Remember reading about the discovery of microbes? What happened there? What was the sense data? Well, people got sick, and they noticed that when you took a microscope to the fluids that you got out of these people, they looked different from the fluids of healthy people. This is how we diagnose disease nowadays, is we take tissue cultures, right? You give a blood sample, you give lymph, I don't know what they take a swab of whatever fluid is pouring out of your food. Okay, they put it under a microscope and they look and they see if there's little wiggly things. And they say, none of these wiggly things, so you don't have this disease. Okay, So there's a set of sensory experiences.
But
What about
before microscopes, you could perceive
Right.
viruses.
And did they
so they didn't
believe?
exist.
And did they believe in germs before microscopes?
No.
Right. They didn't believe in germs before microscopes. Well, maybe some people did, but they didn't have the proof. When our sensory equipment gets better, when we can mechanically augment our senses, right, where we can take something so we can see what's going on, where we can have a more rich sensory experience, we have to explain these extra things we are perceiving.
So there's something out there right now that we can't perceive, but it's there.
Not according to Berkeley. Well, we probably have perceptions. Remember, people perceived disease before they knew about microbes. There are things out there that we would perceive if we had the right equipment. If you think of a large hadron super collider, that's an attempt to create sensory experiences of smaller and more active particles than we've ever seen before. That's what every scientific instrument is an attempt to create new sensory experiences. We don't believe in atoms, we don't believe in quarks, we don't believe in superstrings, except on the basis of sensory experiences. So, a physical object, even a bacteria, even a virus, is an ensemble of sense data. It's a pretty, you have to look at, electron micrographs and wiggles on dials, and those electrophoresis gels, the DNA thingies. You have to use esoteric instrumentation to have sensory experiences of DNA, sensory experiences of genes. But that's what it is. It's a sensory experience. Virus, atoms, quarks, all of those can be traced back to sensory experiences. If you stay with the story long enough, you will find the key sensory experiences that lead to people believing in those objects. A physical object is an ensemble of sense data. And this is very modern. But then Berkeley takes a total left turn. Berkeleyan idealism. An object is just a set of ideas. That's it. This is just a set of ideas. The idea of pressure on my hand, which I call weight. The idea of a certain distribution of colors, which I call shape. A sense of resistance. Won't let my finger, my fingers feel thwarted here. I feel a lot of pressure. Resistance to pressure. That I call strength. Right? Every physical property, everything in this object that I call a physical property is actually a set of sensory experiences. Berkeley says, look, Occam's razor. Do we need to believe in matter to explain our experiences? If we don't, there is no matter. By Occam's razor, I spent, 2 weeks ago, I spent a lot of time ranting and raving about how wonderful Occam's razor is and how important it is and how we can't have knowledge without it. If we don't follow Occam's razor, we go wrong. Well, Berkeley says, look, if you follow Occam's razor, you have to ask yourself, do we need to believe in matter to explain the universe, to explain our experiences? And Berkeley says, no, we don't. Berkeley says we don't need to believe in matter to explain the universe, to explain our experiences of the world. We do not need to believe in matter, so there is no matter. Ideal is someone who does not believe in material, who believes in something other than material existence, and Berkeley thinks there is no matter. So, for me, the beautiful thing about this is that the logic is very hard to refute. It's very hard to argue with this logic. We've taken Locke, who, in my opinion, still the best fundamental epistemologist. He's the guy who started epistemology on the right track. And then, working directly from Locke's starting point, Berkeley gets us to this position where we're not supposed to believe in matter. Now, see how strong this is. When Berkeley first published this, Dr. Samuel Johnson, the lexicographer, said, well, this is rubbish. I can prove Berkeley wrong. Look, here's a rock or a chair or something. There, I proved him wrong. Ouch, I proved him wrong again. Does this work? Logically, does this work? Yes. Second? What about hallucinations? Very, very good point. Has anyone ever had hallucinatory pain? Ever had dream pain? Once when I was asleep, I had a dream which I was trying to go into a room, but just as I was going in, the door was slammed violently in my face, and I felt it physically, like, wow. I don't know if it was. I don't think it was as vivid as a real experience. I don't have vivid dreams, but some people do, and hallucinations. And Berkeley would say, "Well, look, can you prove this? This is something that helps Berkeley. Can you prove that matter exists?" Well, I feel it. Well, yes, but you can feel things in hallucinations. You can feel things in dreams. Berkeley's reply to Johnson was that, okay, tell me what part of that was not a sensory experience. You kick a rock, it hurts. What part of it was not sensory? You have a feeling of. Berkeley didn't say that kicking rocks wouldn't hurt. He didn't say that rocks don't exist. What Berkeley said is that esse is perceiving. To exist is to be perceived. To exist is to be perceived. You perceive the rock through your sensory equipment, which includes your foot. Okay? Pain is an idea. Pain is a sensation, an internal sensation. So I kick something that causes pain, ouch, and I have this internal sensation. And I say, look, that proves that the table exists. Berkeley says, yes, and we know it exists as an idea. No, it exists as real, as matter, as something outside myself. So Berkeley says, there's nothing outside yourself. There's nothing outside us. There's just ideas. This is a complex ensemble of ideas. It's nothing but ideas. SE is perceiving. Existence is perception. Yes?
When you use the table, like you can break your toe, so that shows like
Lots of pain. Well, yes, you have your idea of your foot is now the idea of a damaged foot. I had a broken leg once. I was in a cast for like 3 or 4 months. Berkeley would say that, look, what part of that was not sensation? What part of that was matter? Everything is ideas. A stapler is an idea. A broken stapler is an idea. And we have ideas, like a leg is an idea. And we have these transformations of ideas into other ideas. Remember, we operate under Occam's razor. If we don't need an idea, then we should not believe in it. And this works enormously well in astronomy. It's worked enormously well in science. It's a fundamental principle of logic. There's no way around it. We have to follow Occam's razor or we don't know anything. And Berkeley claims that we don't need matter. We don't need to believe in it. All we have to believe in is ideas. So I'd like to leave it at this point because I want this really written. Between now and Wednesday, see if you can think of something that exists where we know its existence other from the fact that we perceive it. Existence is the act of being perceived. SE is perceiving. And if we don't, why should we believe in matter? We do. But why? Why should we believe in matter? Why?